We know sort of how the direction of the season has gone for better or for worse. So with that being said, let's take away some positives. And I wrote down MVP first, but I think we should probably save that for one of the later things just because that's like the big award. So let's get into some we did freshman of the year, sophomore of the year, junior of the year, senior of the year. Let's start out with freshman.
All right, for freshmen, it's tough because in Greg Schiano's system, for the most part, how you doing, Jason? Thank you for coming and spend this time with us while we break down Rutgers football for the season. A lot of freshmen did not really make an appearance this year outside of a couple in regards to whether it's later in games or if they're on the special team unit. But two freshmen that I had my eye on so far this year was the 4-star linebacker duo of Kamar Archie and DJ McClary. Those two have been in the opportunities that they've had so far this year. For Kamar Archie, 3 tackles against Oregon, and for McClary, 3 tackles in his debut against Norfolk State, 1 tackle against Oregon. And despite them not really getting a lot of opportunities in Rutgers or on the field this year for Rutgers, is due to how much veterans are on this defense, especially in that linebacking core. They did get a lot of transfers for that front seven. They were able to make opportunities of what they were able to do so far this year, and they made the most of it. And for Greg Schiano, that's going to be something that he keeps his eye on going into spring ball and going into next season.
Yeah, those are good picks. Now, you're right. We did have a small sample size this year, and we usually do with Coach Schiano. I went with AJ Sorace rather, only because, he was only out there for 9 attempts, but he started off 0 for 3, and then he warmed up and got 2 touchdowns, hit Michael Thomas III, fellow freshman, for his only catch and touchdown of his career so far. So that's my pick. I know it was in garbage time, but he looked nice out there, and he also looked good in the spring game before the season started. So I take that into account too, because that's really the only other part of the sample size we have. So now we go on to sophomore of the year, and I kind of have a cop-out answer for this. It's my only co-award, but I'll let you go first because I know you have a solid answer for this one.
My answer, because you could go either way on whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side. I went on the offensive side, and I chose KJ Duff, primarily because, one, 2025 Biletnikoff Award watch list alongside Ian Strong and DT Sheffield. But out of all the three, you can make a case that KJ has been the most productive receiver for this Rutgers offense this season. 51 catches for 854 yards this year, 94 yards per game receiving, third in yards, fourth in receptions per game, fifth in receiving yards per game in the Big Ten. And this is a Big Ten that includes not only the duo of Cornell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, you also have to include Makai Lemon from USC as well as Denzel Boston from Washington. So KJ Dubb being top 5, let alone top 3 on those in those categories and receiving, with how strong and just how the big names that are involved in regards to the wide receivers that the Big Ten have had this year is very, very impressive for a sophomore who's, for the most part, didn't really get the chance to show off his abilities until the Guaranteed Rate Bowl last year against Kansas State. So that's why I have him for sophomore of the year. And not only his 251-yard, 1 touchdown on 6 receptions, man, I add against Purdue, beyond being the 6th 200-yard receiving game in Rutgers history, it was also the second most yards in a game in Rutgers history for a single game. So
Yeah,
easily, it's my sophomore of the year.
Yeah. I believe the first one, number 1, was in 2014, and his name is escaping me at the moment. My co-award winners for that, obviously, I went with KJ Duff too, and I went with Antoine Raymond. I'm sure you could have guessed that he would have been my other sophomore of the year candidate. And I know what they say about splitting awards, but it's happened. It's happened in NBA. It's happened in the NFL. So I get one. All right. I'm not going to do this all the time. I get the one, though. And with Antoine Raymond, his numbers are very symmetrical, very OCD friendly. He has exactly 200 attempts, exactly 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And he also has 15 for 163 catching the ball and a touchdown. notable games, obviously, 2 weeks ago or 1.5 weeks ago against Maryland, 240 yards on 41 attempts, both career highs. And I expect that both will be the most rushing yards and rushing attempts for a Rutgers running back for a long time. Obviously, there have been prior performances, but this will be the mark for a long time. And he had the 1 touchdown, and then he had 29 attempts, 116 in the touchdown against Purdue, and 26 attempts for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he had a stretch here of 4 straight games with 2 rushing touchdowns, from Miami of Ohio on September 6th to Minnesota, September 27th. So I couldn't really decide. Both of them have been super dominant, and it's seasons that I don't want to be cast away just because of our record or because we've lost disappointing games. So with that being said, we got Junior of the Year. And yeah, you got it. Go ahead.
For Junior of the Year, I had to go for the defensive side, and a linebacker, one of the veteran linebackers, Darrell DeJambe. 41 total tackles on the season, 2 forced fumbles as well. He's been one of the few players on this Rutgers defense that's been able to get the ball free and be able to cause game-changing turnovers. And his best game so far this year against Iowa, he looked like one of the better linebackers out there, and this is against an Iowa team that's known for having very good linebackers. He had 8 total tackles, 2 solo, 6 assisted. So him being that junior, he's easily Junior of the Year in my opinion, just not only off the defensive end but in general.
All right, well, we have a little bit of a disagreement here, and Jabome has had a solid year, but if we're going based off projections, he has played every game this year, and he has a little over half of the total tackles that he had last year, less than half tackles for loss, 2.5 less sacks, same amount of fumbles, no pass deflections, only 1 last year. But he's had a good year. But I would say the Junior of the Year is Ian Strong for me, just because of the fact that, he got his draft stock up from maybe not even being drafted to he's been as high as, I believe, pick 26 in projected drafts that I've seen. And the only reason why I didn't have him for offensive player of the, well, I guess that's a spoiler for offensive player of the year. The only reason I didn't have him is because he missed 2 games or 2.5 games, I guess. But he, when playing, has been Rutgers' #1 option on offense. And I had to give it to Ian. But if there's something that in your minds sort of separated Jabome from Ian, I'd like to hear it, though.
What I separated from those two has been just he's been one of the few bright spots for Rutgers' defense, especially on a front seven that has been having a lot of struggles against stopping the run. And he's been their best tackler for the most part. The other two when it comes to top 3 tackles, the first 2 are DBs. So being top 3 in tackles as a linebacker when you're supposed to be #1 in that spot, he's been one of the few bright spots on that front seven. That's why I had to give him that award. Because you're 100% with Ian. I have him for my Offensive Player of the Year, even despite him missing 2 games. Because as we see with how Rutgers' offense has been, Ethan has felt so much more comfortable when he's able to have options, and one of those options being Ian Strong. And he's easily been one of the best wide receivers, not only in the Big Ten, but one of the best wide receivers for Ethan throughout his entire career, to be completely honest.
Yeah, both Strong and Duff have been 2 of the best wide receivers in college football altogether this year, and it's great to see. And that is fair. You do have to show some love to the defense on a unit that has underperformed, but there have been diamonds in the rough. Unfortunately, I don't have any defensive players. Oh, no, I have 1 defensive player listed, but ironically, it's for Defensive Player of the Year. So, but I will get into offensive and defensive in a second. Senior of the Year, I'll go first for this one. There were a couple nominees, but there was Gus Zelinskas, who outside of 1 bad snap has been probably our best offensive lineman this year, and helped the run game, helped Antoine attack the middle. And defensively, Eric O'Neill was a possible candidate, but for me, I had to give it to Ethan. DT has had a solid year too, not the superstar year you'd expect, but he has been. He has shown flashes of dominance, but for me, it's got to be Ethan. The guy's got career highs in passing yards, completion percentage, yards per pass. he needs just 2 touchdown passes in his next 2 games to surpass last year's career high in touchdown passes, career high in quarterback rating. He came up clutch against Purdue, against Washington, against Iowa, against Maryland, against Miami of Ohio. He has 350-yard passing performances, including, or not 300, and including a 387 performance against Washington that doesn't really get talked about just because we lost by, I believe, 19 points. So, I want to give Ethan love because Rutgers was very hard on him last year, even though he had a solid year, but he's really taken that step up, and he's been a true leader for us.
For me, I decided to go with Gus Olinkis because he's been one of the better centers in the nation so far. Outside of one bad snap against Minnesota, you can say he's been a literal shield out there for Ethan, and he's been one of the primary reasons why Ethan has been able to be so successful. He's been able to keep Ethan upright. He's been one of the few all offensive linemen on Rutgers' offense to not really give up a sack or pressure outside of the Oregon game. And seeing how Rutgers has dealt with plenty of injuries, especially at that tackle spot so far this year, and we've had to see so many different offensive line lineups so far this season. Being able to have Gus Olinkis to be that glue guy to keep everybody on the same page is a very, very impressive and just something as a center that I personally have to tip my hat off to because that makes the job of the center 10 times harder, being able to have to keep a second team guy or a third team guy on the same pace as everybody else, seeing how the next man up especially has been primarily on that Rutgers offensive line. So that's why I have Gus Olinkis as my senior of the year because he's been the senior to keep everybody on the same page, and he's been a big time leader for that Rutgers offense.
Yeah, and if you noticed, when Ethan drops back, the pocket collapses, but the middle always stays open. I mean, that's why he's able to get out of there and do his little duck waddle, get a few yards when you think that it's a for sure sack. And you're right, it doesn't help that Tyler Needham, Mashoud Giwa, and Taj White have sort of been carouseling around that left tackle position all year. And obviously, we've had other injuries on the front line too. But it was so early on that I don't consider that part of the carousel. But Gus Zielinskis definitely gets his flowers. Definitely one of the better Scarlet Knight linemen I can remember watching. We had Holland Pierce last year, who I would put in that same conversation. But Gus Zielinskis, best center I can remember. So we went through all the classmen of the year. Let's do offensive player of the year. So who's your offensive player of the year?
I've mentioned it, Ian Strong, because yes, he did miss 2 games, but he's easily been one of the better receivers so far in the Big Ten. And is a lot of people going into this year was thinking, how well is DT Sheffield going to be going from North Texas to another passing offense in Rutgers? But it feels like Ian Strong has easily stole the show, despite all three of them, him, KJ Duff, and DT Sheffield, all getting the attention that they well deserved. It seems that Ian Strong has been that wide receiver that, when in doubt, he's going to be able to make that play. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen KJ Duff be able to have his better games because all that attention primarily has been on Ian Strong and DT Sheffield on the outside. Ian has showed that he is a valuable wide receiver one on this offense, and we've seen during those 2 games where he wasn't playing, that offense was really stagnating at certain parts of the game, especially in the passing game. And when he came back, it felt like nothing changed. It felt like the same Rutgers offense that we've seen before he left, and we saw Ethan be able to be more comfortable. And a lot of those 300-yard performances or 250-plus-yard performances have been with Ian Strong being on the field. I look at the Illinois game, I look at the Purdue game, and I primarily look at the Maryland game just last week, where we saw Ian Strong be able to break out and take advantage of the one-on-one matchups on the outside. He's been one of the few receivers for Rutgers that can get off of press coverage and be the strong hands and being able to make a bunch of amazing catches on the sideline, and the ability to make a man miss and have that ability of getting yards after the catch. All those traits have shown why he's been so valuable for Rutgers, and Ethan has to honestly has to contribute a lot of his success so far in the passing game to Ian Strong so far this
Yeah,
season.
for sure. And he does have to I'm really curious to see Strong's pro evaluations. Yeah, I don't know if he comes back. I know Adam thinks that he could come back, as long as he doesn't transfer. I mean, it's if he's either here or declaring for the draft, I'm happy because one is his own dreams coming true, and one is Scarlet Knights fans' dreams coming true. As for a guy that we need to bring back next year, I'm going for his counterpart, his teammate in high school. Offensive Player of the Year to me is KJ Duff. Now, I just like you dedicated this to the NFL route and awarded the Offensive Player of the Year to a non-quarterback because MVP in the NFL has basically been a quarterback award. So they decided,
Unfortunately.
I mean, hey, this year you can argue Jonathan Taylor. Last year you can argue Saquon. Year before CMC, but whatever. It happens. You could have argued Jamar Chase last year, same thing. But KJ Duff to me is the Offensive Player of the Year, and it was definitely a 4-man race between him, Strong, Ethan, and Raymond. But like I said about the quarterback award, and also because to me, KJ has been a little more consistent. His role has always been wide receiver 1A or 1B, depending on how you flip the coin, whatever week it is. He only had 2 catches last week, but it was still for 69 yards. The least amount of receiving yards he had in the game was 41 against Oregon, where the offense was taken out with a quarter left. But every other game, he has had at least 3 catches for 60 or more yards. He had a stretch where to start the year, actually, which you think of Ian Strong, you think of the Illinois game, you obviously think of Purdue, but he had a stretch to start the year where he had 5 catches, 6 catches, 6 catches, 7 catches, 6 catches for 54, 71, 119, 92, and 84. So he's been consistent all year. And I think that part of the reason why he didn't really do as dominant against Maryland is because he was coming off the 6 for 241 and the 9 for 93. And they realized that he was the primary option. And obviously Ian Strong made them pay. I'm not mad at Ian Strong for being your Offensive Player of the Year, though. Both of them have been dominant. It's just, to me, the total numbers, the consistency, and also KJ Duff getting 53 catches on 17 and a half yards per catch, 6 touchdowns. He's having a monster year. He's only a sophomore, and I pray that we bring him back because he's going to get a lot of offers.
He's going to be the top, one of the top wide receiver recruits in the portal this year, if he even thinks about considering it. And for this offense, they need to keep KJ. He needs to keep KJ, especially with.
Are the two.
I hopefully see him staying and being able to stay loyal with the team that gave him that first opportunity. But if he is going to leave in the portal, I completely understand. There's so many teams right now are looking for that type of size out of a wide receiver because he is kind of what the NFL prototype. A lot of NFL scouts are going to be looking for at wide receiver.
The CeeDee Lambs, the Juju Smith-Schusters, you can go on with that. Oh man, I think that him coming back is very much not dependent, but it could very much correlate on what Ian Strong does. Because, like I said, they went to high school together. They've known each other for probably since sandbox days. They might be, I'm not certain on this, I can't confirm, but I can imagine they might be rooming together at school. But if Ian Strong declares for the draft, there's your number one recruit in keeping KJ around. He is from New York, and the closest school for Riverhead, New York, that is D1 FBS is Rutgers. Syracuse is miles away, so hopefully that is enough for him to stay around. But if it's based on money, someone's going to give him a bigger bid. So we got to hope that he's loyal. And if he's not, like you said, you can't blame him. So let's see. That was Offensive Player of the Year. Now for Defensive Player of the Year, I actually had it as Eric O'Neal before the show started, but I had a change of heart, and that's with all due respect to Mr. O'Neal. He's had an incredible stretch of late, including a 10 combined tackle performance against Maryland, 7 individual, but he had half of his season stats basically last week, so I can't go too much on recency bias. I'm actually going with Bo Masco. He's basically been our CB1 this year. As a sophomore, too, he really did take that step. And I was between, like I said, him and Eric O'Neal, and I would show love to Jet Elad, too. But to me, Jet got burnt a little too much on pass coverage, especially in the first half of the year. I was really high on Cam Miller, and he's had a few good weeks, too. But in total. I don't think he was quite Defensive Player of the Year for Rutgers. So I'm giving it to Bo. He had a key interception week 2 when Miami of Ohio was on upset alert against us. They were down 4 points in field goal range towards the end zone, and he took it 68 yards. Now, he also has 38 total tackles, which for a corner is insane, and 2 tackles for loss, which means that when he was blitzing, he was getting the running backs when there wasn't really too much of a running back defense this year. Let me correct that. There was a running back defense. There wasn't too much of a quarterback scrambling defense. So to me, on a defense with not too many bright spots, he did shine the brightest.
I completely understand that in regards to Bo Masco. He's been one of the few bright spots in that secondary. But I actually did choose Jet Elad for my defensive player of the year because he's been one of the few players on that Rutgers defense that's been able to cause turnovers, and that's been one of the rarities for Rutgers defense this year. And when Rutgers is able to cause turnovers, we've seen slight amounts of success. And I look back to how great he's been playing so far this year. Overall, 59 tackles on the season, and he's been able to force 1 fumble, 2 interceptions so far this year. I think that leads the team if
Yeah.
I'm yeah, I think that does lead the team as we speak right now. So he's been one of the few game changers on in that secondary unit. And yes, he has seen situations where he's been burnt. I look back at the Minnesota game and as well as the Iowa game, the touchdown in the third quarter that really did change a lot of the momentum for the Rutgers defense finishing off that game, because in the first half they looked like the more physical unit against Iowa, to be completely honest, despite the high scoring. They still looked like they were more of the stronger teams, and if they were able to go into second half with a couple of key adjustments, it looked like a game that they were going to be able to win. But so far this year, Jet Elad has been one of the few bright spots for that defense. This when it comes to being a run fitter, when it comes to going into pass coverage, I definitely look at Jet Elad as one of the few spots where that safety position, especially in a Big Ten that's known for being heavily in the passing game, he still has that element of being able to come down and fit the run. So Jet Elad easily for me is my defensive player of the year, but it was a tough 1A 1B because Bo Masco. I was looking at both of their seasons in comparison. You could make the case for either or.
Yeah, you could. And I understand your argument because on a defense that doesn't force punts, the best defense you can do is turn the ball over. So that's a valid argument. And I sort of was mixed on this next award because it's sort of what's the word? It's sort of I forget what the word is, but basically it can go a number of directions. I'll think of it after the show ends, of course. But most unexpected leap for me, it was Antoine Raymond because he came into the year as running back 1B, and he unfortunately did have to be running back number 1, not even 1A, just the workhorse guy. And I went over his OCD friendly numbers, but yeah, Antoine Raymond, sophomore coming into the year, he was 1B. CJ Campbell gets hurt for the year. CJ Campbell could possibly be back next year, too. So that would be pretty cool if he decided to forego. Well, it would be tough to go into the NFL draft after being injured all year. But,
Yeah,
anyways,
especially after missing a whole year full of injuries, he has to stay another year.
yeah, exactly. Because he's coming from FAU, and this is his chance in the Big Ten to shine. But I'm saying Antoine Raymond, unexpected leap, just from a pure workhorse standpoint, being consistent, and the fact that when there were games where Ethan wasn't necessarily an A quarterback, and they started feeding Raymond, and all of a sudden the offense opened up a lot more. I think back to I forget which team it was, maybe Washington, where it was third and like 17 or something in field goal range. They give it to Antoine Raymond just to try to get closer for a field goal, and he takes it 25 yards for a first down, first and goal.
Yeah, that was the Washington game.
Yeah, he's done that a number of games, and so to me, it's Antoine Raymond. I thought even when CJ Campbell got hurt, it would be sort of like a Raymond Jashawn Benjamin 1A 1B situation, but no, Shiano gave him the Menungai treatment, and I think he's earned it.
100%. That's where I have him as well for most unexpectedly because going into the year, we thought CJ Campbell and Antoine Wayman were going to be Kyle Monungai by committee. And we saw CJ Campbell being able to bring the power of Monungai while Antoine Raymond had that breakaway speed that Monungai has shown so far in his NFL career. And since the injury in, I think, week 3, we've really seen Antoine Raymond completely take over. 18 carries against Iowa, 26 carries against Minnesota, 15 against Washington, another 18 against Oregon, 29 against Purdue,
Hmm.
41 just last week against Maryland for 240 yards. And he right now, as the season species, a 1,000-yard rusher. And I'm excited for potentially next year to see what could be of Antoine Raymond and
Yeah,
CJ Campbell because it was destined for those two to be able to split carries and be able to show the dominance in the running game for this Rutgers offense. And despite Jashawn Benjamin not being able to take that next step to be that complementary back, we've really seen Antoine Raymond show that he has the potential of being an RB1. And
sure.
it's going to be interesting going into next year of who really is going to be the running back that gets primarily most of the carries because we are going to see a 51-49 split in regards to carries, but I truly believe the 51 should go to Antoine Raymond
For sure.
because so
Coming,
far this year we've seen him being able to show off that speed and power that we've seen from Monungai throughout his career at Rutgers. And I'm not saying Raymond is Monungai, but being able to go from a running back Monungai that's had 1,000 yards religiously throughout his time at Rutgers to being able to put up 1,000 yards in the season in a year where you were supposed to be that second running back is very, very impressive. Coming off of a year just last year where he didn't even crack 500 yards.
nope. And last year he was efficient, but this year he's looking like a star. And on 5 yards per carry, by the way, that's 200 attempts for 1,000 yards. That's a big sample size to be getting that. And by the way, the word I was going to
5 yards, 5.5 yards a carry in the Big Ten,
yeah,
knowing that this is becoming more and more of the conference where defenses are becoming more elite is
yeah,
very, very impressive, especially going up against good run defenses such as Oregon, such as Iowa, and coming up this week against Ohio State, that which has been one of the best run defenses in the nation. If Antoine Raymond is able to just do half of what he did against Maryland, it's going to be a huge boost for the Rutgers offense.
yeah. And I'm going to take a look at. By the way, the word I was thinking of was subjective. That was the word that was escaping my mind. It's a most unexpected leap is a very subjective award. So it's ironic that we both agree in it when this is probably the most opinionated award in terms of like the definition of what do you think is unexpected. So I actually wanted to say Antoine Raymond, I'm more confident that he comes back than Duff because of two reasons. One, he didn't come in here as a pairing with anybody. He came in here on his own accord. Now, Duff and Strong did come here because they were sold on the program, but they also came in here knowing each other and being really good friends. But number two is because of the running back legacy in the NFL. Now, we've had our share of good wide receivers too, obviously. You think of Sanu, you think of Britt, but there's been Monungai who he just had a 198 performance for a touchdown in his first game as a starter, and he's their 1B right now. He's Chicago Bears 1B running back.
Just
And
had a rushing touchdown just this Sunday as
that's
well.
3 games in a row that he's had a rushing touchdown. And sorry, 4 games in a row because I believe he had a rushing touchdown, his first rushing touchdown, and then he got the 198, he got the touchdown, and then back-to-back weeks he's been the power back. And he's small, but he is a power back. So that's a lot. That says a lot about Monungai. But that's also why I think that Raymond could stay is because he has faith in Shiano being the coach to elevate him as a running back, looking with
Yeah.
goal for the NFL. I think that he
Yeah, coming from a running back tree that includes Monungai, Isaiah Pacheco,
Isaiah
and
Pacheco,
now
bingo. Yeah, and Ray Rice, obviously.
yeah, seeing that Antoine Raymond does have the potential of doing just what those players did during their time at Rutgers, and seeing how Rutgers running backs typically are very successful in the NFL. Isaiah Pacheco has been literally the backbone for this Chiefs rushing attack for the last couple of years. And you can say he's been a primary reason why the Chiefs were able to get to the Super Bowl on multiple occasions, because his running performances in the playoffs, being a big bruiser type of back, is what a lot of successful teams need to have in the playoffs to thrive. And now, what's after seeing with Antoine Raymond, he's able to run between the tackles. Some of his best runs this year have been A gap runs. So he's been able to, if he's able to take that next step next year and go from 1,000 yards to potentially 1,300 or 1,400 yards, there's the sky's the limit for him at Rutgers, and that's truly why I can see him coming back this year, because Shiano sees it. There's a reason why Jashawn Benjamin or Samuel Brown the fifth started to get a decline in carries after week 3 when CJ Campbell got hurt, because we see everything from Antoine Raymond right now. Jashawn and Samuel were not able to produce.
Yeah, I was surprised that Samuel Brown, not the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, or not the first, second, third, or fourth, but the fifth actually didn't really get that many carries, because when he came back from injury, it looked like he was RB2. Then Chiano started giving that to Benjamin. But also because Brown is a senior, I thought that Chiano maybe would have trusted him a little bit more, because he's been here since not since the Monangai days, because that was literally a year ago, but since Monangai himself was an underclassman, Samuel Brown has been here. And also it's interesting too, because Raymond coming into the year was the power back to CJ Campbell being the hybrid receiving back. So it's interesting that he went from power back to hybrid back, and it worked out perfectly for him.
Yeah, so far this year, he has shown some ability in the pass game as well. 15 receptions so far on the year, and seeing that ability to be a hybrid back, especially at the Big Ten level as that running back one thing about coaches, once they find that the iron's hot, they don't touch it. And as we've seen with Antoine Raymond, he's been showing a lot of production so far this year, and you don't want to mess with that, especially for a running attack that needed to step up when CJ Campbell got hurt.
Yes. All right, now on to the biggest individual award you can get, and the most honorable, because it is coming from us here at the Voice of College Football Rutgers. I bestow it upon for me, Ethan Kaliakmanis. I'm not sure for Donovan who he's got, but this is the MVP award. That's my guy. Coming into the year, he had seasons of 52, 53% completion percentages. This year, he's at 62. He had years of 14 touchdown passes and 18. He needs just 2 to surpass his 18 from last year. His average yards per attempt this year, 8.3. That's almost a first down per completion, or per passing attempt, by the way. His QBR, or his rating rather, 144.9. The only thing he regressed in was rushing yards, and that's because he was too busy slinging the rock. He wasn't thinking about getting his 2.5 yards per carry like last year, or his yard under PJ Fleck. And you look at individual performances. Coming off last week, he did get 2 interceptions, but he completed 65% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, a rating of 207, and 3 of those were, like we said, to Ian Strong for the hat trick. His worst game of the year, well, Oregon, but his worst competitive game of the year was Illinois, and he had 25 of 45, and he looked off during that, and he still got 253 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 110 rating. Purdue, he was a monster, 70% completion percentage, 359 yards. I mean, I can read numbers all day. Like I said about the Washington game, people forget about that because it was a little lopsided in the second half, but 31 of 53, 86, 2 touchdowns. And look, he is, I believe, second or third. I think second in even after the bye week in Big Ten passing yards. And he started the year after the first 3 games, which were the only 3 games against non-Big Ten competition. He was number 1 in completion percentage. This is a guy who was like 50% completion percentage, and he was number 1 through the first 3 weeks, and he's remained consistent. He shot up his draft stock. He became captain. He took accountability. So that's my MVP. And Ethan, when your tenure at Rutgers University is over, you are going to be remembered as one of the greatest Rutgers quarterbacks of all time.
I have Ethan as well because yes, the stats that you said, all while being sacked the most in the Big Ten at 29 times so far this season. First QB since Gary Nova in 2014 to potentially finish top 3 in passing yards. So far this year, he's 14th in the country in passing yards, second in the Big Ten. And you said big performances. I look at Iowa. 24 for 40, 333 yards, 2 total touchdowns. And this is the same defense that held Dante Moore to 112 yards, Francisco Mendoza 233 yards, and
Yeah,
Jordan Mayava just last week to 254 yards. Ethan has shown so far this year he's been the most successful against the one of the best defenses in the Big Ten outside of Oregon and Ohio State, and that alone is why I put him at MVP. And so far this year, he's only thrown one game less than 20 yards, and that was the Oregon game. Outside of that, it's been at at least 220, at most over 350. And we've seen Ethan be able to shine with the 3-headed monster that he's had this season. So start off the year, it was DT Sheffield for throughout the first 2-3 games. Throughout games 4 through 7, we saw KJ Duff and that connection get stronger and stronger. And then with the return of Ian Strong as well, Ethan has looked comfortable being able to throw the ball and being able to raise that completion percentage from 53% to 62% is major. Yes, it's a 9% jump, but this is the Big Ten that we're talking about in regards to defenses. And that's that's a huge leap for a quarterback that was just going into the year. He didn't even look like he had the potential of being drafted. At
yeah,
most, he looked like a 6th to 7th rounder. At best, 6th to 7th rounder. On
yeah.
average, potentially a UDFA. But now he looks like he could go 3rd, 4th round at best. If the finish off the season strong and has a big game potentially against Ohio State, he has a chance of cracking into the a 2nd or 3rd round or possibly a day 2 pick. So far this year, Ethan has been the MVP because even in the losing efforts, he did keep these games close. I look at the Minnesota game, his first game back against the Gophers in Minnesota since leaving Minnesota. So he's had big games so far this year, and yes, 7 interceptions on the year. He's had 2 games where he had multiple interceptions in them, and if he's able to finish off the year strong and just keep it at 7 or 8 interceptions, we can potentially see a 20 plus TD, less than 10 interception season for a Rutgers quarterback, and that's something that Rutgers hasn't seen in over 5-6 years.
Yeah, and those 2 games with 2+ interceptions, one was against Oregon, and the other one we came away with the win by 15 points and scored 35. So even when he's throwing interceptions, it's either, well, I want to say a fluke performance, but to be honest, that's elite competition, and Ethan would be facing nothing but elite competition if he were to make it to the NFL. So I hope that the game against Ohio State is different because that's the other game where he's going to be tested. I mean, we've talked about this several times. That's what scouts are going to look at is his game against Oregon. That was rough. His game against Ohio State, can he perform better? Same goes for Ian Strong. Same goes for
Your KJ Duff, that's the same thing that goes for Raymond. That same thing that goes for a lot of the defense, a lot of that front 7 on that defense. Bradley Reaver, Eric O'Neill, Jet Elad, Cam Miller. This Ohio State game is going to be major because not only is the opportunity for Rutgers to secure a potential bowl bid, as this is going to be their potential chance of getting to 6 wins. It keeps 7-5 alive, and going from a season from last year 7-5 to going out 6-6 is a downgrade at the end of the year, at the end of the discussion. It's a downgrade. So they're looking to try to keep a 7-5 season alive and a bowl bid, and that coming off of a year where they were in so many games, you can say shoulda, woulda, coulda about Iowa, shoulda, woulda, coulda about Minnesota, shoulda, woulda, coulda about Washington, because up to the 3rd quarter where Damon Williams just went, Damon Williams looked like potentially the second coming of Lamar Jackson out here.
Yeah.
They were in that game. They were only down by 3 going into the half. I think the score was 13-10 going into the halftime of that Washington game. So
we were up 10 at one point.
So these 2 games, Ohio State and Penn State, if they're able to, they're looking at the opportunity to win out and finish off the season on a good note with a potential bowl win. Because last year they won 7-5 and lost the bowl game. They're looking to finish off the year with a good note for these seniors. And Ohio State is going to be major. There's going to be a lot of scouts there. This is on the road. This is at the shoe, 100,000 in attendance. I'm looking to see what Ethan can do. I'm looking to see what Eric O'Neal can do, because so far this year, if anybody had the opportunity of going into the draft last year, it was Eric, because currently the only person that was better than him last year is Ravens rookie 2nd-round pick Mike Green out of Marshall. So far this year, his numbers have taken a dip. If he's able to go have 2 strong back-to-back games, with Maryland having 5 total tackles, 2 of them being for loss, and go into Ohio State against one of the best teams in the country and be able to make his mark, I know he's looking at this game. Rutgers knows that he's looking at this game. A lot of people in Eric O'Neal's camp knows that this game is major for him to have an opportunity of impressing scouts until the Senior Bowl or the Tropical Bowl.